Hi, I'm Christy Cordingley, and this is my show, The Flare Up Show, and this special episode is produced in partnership with Clarissa Burt and In the Limelight Media. I originally created this show to advocate for myself through chronic illness, but today it's grown into a wellness show that's listened to all over the world. I love to practice well-being for the whole being. So if you're ready to rise, thrive, and elevate your life, stay tuned, enjoy the show, and thanks for listening. All right, welcome to the Flare Up Show. This show is produced by the amazing Clarissa Burt and In the Limelight Media. And today I have the fabulous Trish Ahjel Roberts, who is a transformational coach, happiness expert, international speaker, and founder of the Mind-Blowing Happiness Coaching Company. She's the author of 4 books, including the bestseller 12 Steps to Mind-Blowing Happiness, which was endorsed by Jack Canfield, Marci Shimoff, and Iyanla Vanzant. Hopefully I said that right. Her latest book, The Anger Myth, Understanding and Overcoming the Mental Habits That Steal Your Joy, was released in 2024 to rave reviews from the Library Journal and Booklist and is being translated internationally. She speaks professionally on the topics of diversity, compassionate leadership, happiness, and transforming anger to action. So appropriate for this time in this lifetime. And she is a certified life coach, registered yoga, meditation instructor, and energy healer with over a decade of Buddhist study. Welcome to the show, Trish. I'm so excited to talk to you.
Thank you, Chrissy. I'm so excited to be here.
I was literally sitting in my seat vibrating. I'm like, oh, it's gonna be so fun. Okay. So I'm gonna move mine down a little bit. And let's start with you. Tell us a little bit about you. Where do you come from? How did you get into the work of happiness?
I know. I often tell people I wrote the book Mind-Blowing Happiness, but I was not always mind-blowingly happy. So, as you know, I'm originally from Brooklyn. I moved to Atlanta, and it was around 2010. I had been living in Atlanta for a few years with my daughter. I was a single mom. Work wasn't going well. My mom had been diagnosed with cancer. It was just like my relationship ended. Like it just seemed like nothing was working. And I sat at my kitchen table one day and I decided to Google the word meditation because I figured
Mhm.
nothing else is working. Maybe that'll work. I don't know if you've ever done the angry typing. I was like, maybe this will do it. But with that, I found a local meditation center out here in Atlanta. And I went in there the first day. When the woman met me at the door, she was kind of like, "Are you sure you want to do this?" And I was like, "Why is she asking me this?" Well, it turns out the meditation was on death. And I thought,
Oh.
okay, perfect. Right? My life is crazy. Of course it's going to be on death. But from there, I just learned so much, and I became a voracious reader of Buddhist text and just started studying every day. I wondered what else I didn't know. I had already been practicing yoga, so I decided to go on and get my yoga certification, my coaching certification, and then started my business in 2019, teaching all the things that I had learned that really had transformed my own life. So.
That's amazing. Not that I appreciate someone going through times of struggle, but it's almost like there's a disintegration that comes before the full integration, right? It's sort of, you get to this place where, like, I have no choice but to choose
Yeah.
myself, right? Like, there's nothing left but what I have inside me. So let's take a look in there. And that's so amazing. And you're sharing this so widely with so many people. And what I love about your new book with the anger myth is I think sometimes, and I could be wrong, but I know definitely with people that I've worked with have been around, sometimes we think of happiness as just positivity. But it's
Hmm.
not. We're complex, and that's what you said at the beginning, right? I was writing this book about mind-blowing happiness, but I wasn't always mind-blowingly happy because we are human still, and there's still pieces, and anger is a useful emotion, but it has to be applied correctly. So, and then I just want to go back to the keyboard thing because I'm old enough where the keys used to actually like click in. So if you typed hard enough or were mad enough, they would go flying off. So once I was really mad at my boss, and he was a hunter pecker type of typer, and I switched the keys on him. He didn't know. So he's
Oh
trying to type.
gosh.
He's like, "What's going on?" Yeah. Anyway, so back to you in your
It's
awesomeness.
funny. It's funny you say that though, because the reality is we learn during difficult times. When things are easy, we don't have to figure things out. You know, it's during those times when things aren't working out that we have the opportunity to learn something. And the idea of mind-blowing happiness really was birthed out of Maslow's needs hierarchy. I
Yeah.
don't know if you had that in school, where it's this idea that we're all looking for self-actualization, which is just to reach our potential, to be our best selves, to discover our own talents and be able to kind of spread those into the world. I had been working for years as a financial advisor. And it's like I was being paid to know this really, really tiny piece of information that I shared with my clients, but I had so much more to
Wow.
offer. So that's what the concept of mind-blowing happiness is. It's not just happy, because sometimes we think of happy as, I have a latte, I'm happy, or, I just finished meditating, I'm happy, or I watched a great movie, I'm happy. But this
Mhm.
idea of really being fulfilled, and it's a journey. So yeah, a lot of
Yeah.
good stuff here.
Could you share a little bit about that? What do you describe fulfillment as?
Well, I think really this idea of reaching your fullest potential,
Mhm.
you
Being
know.
able to see the
I,
possibilities, having vision. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I'll give you a few ideas from the book. I know we're going to jump into the anger myth,
Yes.
but the anger myth was really born out of the 12 steps to mind-blowing happiness. You can
Hmm.
see my co-host, he's popping his head.
There he is. Hi, buddy. Oh, he's made this face like, what is going on?
So
Lucid
it was
dream.
born, my co-host Cooper. So it was born out of the 12 steps to mind-blowing happiness.
Hmm.
And just to give you a little taste of that. So the first step is healing. Everybody has some level of trauma,
Hmm.
whether it was somebody stole their cookie in kindergarten or if it was real major life trauma. And I would say a good percentage of folks are walking around unhealed, with unexamined work that needs to be done. So it's healing, it's spirituality, which doesn't mean religion. It means just acknowledging that you have a non-physical body. No matter what you believe, you know that you have emotions and things like that. And we know there's a non-physical world because we know there's things that we can't see. Like we can put them under a microscope to see
Yeah.
them, you know. So spirituality, and then community and connection.
Hmm.
You've never seen someone who was really unhappy, who was part of like an amazing supportive community. Um, and then self-love and authenticity, which is one I work with my clients a lot on. I find that is a big struggle, particularly for women. Um, and then the fifth one was peace, which is how we got into the anger myth, this idea of being able to transform anger. So I hope that helps give you a little bit of an idea.
It does. It does. What do you
Mhm.
think is the biggest myth about anger?
The biggest myth, and you hinted at it actually, people think that anger is really helpful. Many
Mhm.
times when we're angry, we feel empowered, like we're really, we can speak our minds and do all these things. But the reality is that anger is not helpful. Now, it's something that we all are going to experience. From time to
Mhm.
time, something will make you angry. But the trick is, are you going to be angry for 5 seconds, for 5 minutes, for 5 hours, or for 5 years, right? Or for some people, for 50 years, what I mean? But when you are in the throes of anger, in Buddhism, we call it a deluded mind. It's a delusion.
Mhm.
It's like you're intoxicated. So you can't make any good decisions when you're angry, but our ego makes us think that we're going to make the best decisions. And then we make a mess, you know. And then maybe you start with one problem. I talk about this in the book. You might start with one problem, you get angry, and then now you have three because
Oh.
of the things that you did, with your anger.
It is emotional, and it's funny because emotions are something we can't see, or spirit is something we can't see, but we do have very real physical reactions to emotions, right? So anger, all these survival mechanisms pop up. We get hot, but that also turns off our regulation in our brain. So it's really what you said is true. It's about finding a way to use it as information, like, oh, I feel unsafe here. What's
Yeah.
going on?
Hmm.
And trying to find out what is the purpose of this feeling, or where did this come from, more than I need to act specifically on this notion of revenge that I have right now.
Right. You're right. And then have the notion of doing a little time because you
Yeah.
did you did something not exactly legal, or paying a fine, you know. Yeah. And I mean, that's what the book really does. It breaks down how to process that feeling so that you don't have to sit with it for a long time. And you mentioned, getting hot and stuff like that. We do have that physical effect from anger that we're aware of, but it also has negative health consequences.
Mhm.
We know it when we think of stress, but a lot of times stress is just us being angry about stuff.
Yeah.
Things aren't going our way, so we're stressed. But it's bad for, your cardiovascular health, it's bad for your mental health. So learning to process it is a huge step to living, that more joyful, fulfilled life and having more space to do things we
Yeah.
actually want to do, like reach our potential and see what that looks like.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, some people, like I know myself, sometimes I don't even realize I'm actually angry about something till much further along down the road. Like the fuse is long, others are very quick, so it's very easy to tell, like, hey, this situation is troubling for me. I've got something I need to work on myself or whatever. But for people that maybe have subtle and then they
Yeah.
reach that boiling point finally after, 1,000 paper cuts, how can that be so troubling to know that there's like these subtle versions of anger, not just the out loud aggressive ways of anger?
Yeah, we're really never taught much about our emotions in school, That was one of the most profound teachings that I learned in my study of Buddhism that I put in the book, and I call it anger's seven cranky cousins. So just being aware of the subtle versions so that you know what you're dealing with is really helpful. So the seven cranky cousins are disappointment, right? That's something we don't normally think of as anger. Um, Annoyance, frustration, jealousy, impatience, guilt, and resentment. So, disappointment is typically you thought something was going to happen a certain way and it didn't happen, that way. Annoyance is usually something that's repetitive. So, it's like something that makes you angry just a little bit over and over again.
Mosquito
And then
bite. Yeah.
And then frustration is usually something that you think should have been resolved, but didn't get resolved. But there are all these little forms of anger. And then when you get to things like guilt, and I don't mean guilt because you robbed a bank, because you should
No,
be
no, no,
guilty
no.
if you robbed a bank. But if it's something like, somebody invited you to a party, you didn't want to go, and now you feel guilty, that's self-directed anger,
Mhm.
So yeah, it's just being aware of the different subtle variations is a huge step.
Mhm. How can people learn to, even though anger is not helpful, how can people learn to use or heal their anger or still stay aware of what their needs are? Because the opposite of anger isn't people pleasing or, letting
Yeah.
go of all our boundaries, right? It's this middle area where we're strong but also soft. How do people get there? How do we transform ourselves and find that balance between really like losing our noodles and
Let's lose our noodles.
yeah, yes, you know what I mean. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm glad you mentioned boundaries and people pleasing. There's a lot of information on that in the book, Healthy Boundaries, Unhealthy Boundaries. You definitely want to have your boundaries in place. That's so important. And people pleasing is a great way to be angry and passive aggressive and resentful. So that's not what we're looking at. So in the book, I teach a 5-step approach to help you process your anger, to really transform it without repressing it and without
Mhm.
acting up and expressing it. Because both of those are actually unhealthy. There are studies around that. So we know
Yes.
repressing is not good. And then screaming and yelling and throwing things it's not good either. So I call it a 5-step tame and reframe solution, and I can take you through them
Yeah,
if we have
sure,
a
it
few
would be
minutes.
great. Yeah, if you'd love to, that'd be great.
Yeah, so the first step is to acknowledge, well, the cool thing is it spells out anger. So, hopefully it helps.
Yeah.
It takes a little while to learn them. So I encourage people to try like the first 2 steps first and
Mhm.
practice that out a little bit and then add the other ones later as they can. But
Yeah.
the first one is just to acknowledge your anger. So the A is acknowledge your anger. So you don't want to pretend you're not angry, because that's where you get into the repression and the passive aggressive and the people please, all of that. So it's normal to have that emotion, so acknowledge it, but don't like follow it. You still want to know that, okay, I see you, but maybe I see you like, a little bug on my shoulder, a piece of lint, not something that I have to get all wrapped up in. And the next thing to do, the N, is to notice your breath. So you want to breathe. If you're anything like me, when I get angry, I stop breathing. Sometimes even if I'm just like working on something and I'm really focused, my daughter will be like, Mom, you're not breathing. So you want to breathe and just some deep, long breaths, maybe 3 long breaths. You could do inhale through your nose, exhale through your mouth. You don't have to do anything too weird, no hyperventilating. But just slow down a minute. 1, that'll calm your nervous system a little bit. 2, it'll make sure that there's some oxygen to go to your brain so that you can so that you can think to the next part of your decision. So those are the 2. So if people listening, if the only thing they walk away with is the next time something triggers them, they just say, okay, I got triggered, I didn't like that, and then they breathe, then you're like halfway there. If you can get beyond that, the next step is the G, which is gear up your imagination. For most of us, at some point in our lives, somebody told us to stop daydreaming, to focus, to grow up. Yeah. So we don't, as adults, a lot of us, we don't even know how to imagine anymore. And when you don't have that imagination, it's really hard to have empathy.
It is.
So, if somebody cuts you off in traffic, or maybe they have a different political opinion from you, or, you think that they did something, other variety of something you think is stupid, whatever they bumped into, whatever it is that they might have done. If you can use your imagination, then you can try to put yourself in someone else's situation. So even if somebody did something really rude, the traffic example is always the easy one. They cut you off in traffic, right?
Everybody gets angry. Yeah.
You might say, maybe they're sick. Maybe it's an emergency. Maybe they're late for work. Maybe they were just really, really poorly raised.
Yeah.
Or maybe they're a new driver. Maybe they're lost. Like, you don't know. But you can generate something.
Yes.
To have some empathy there. And
Yeah.
gosh, we need a lot more of that.
I love that. I want to hear the other twos, but even from a science perspective, right? Like it's left brain, right brain. So right brain is the creativity. And the more we enact both sides of our brain, the more empowered we are and the more we can regulate and think of better solutions and also, calm our nervous system and all that. So that makes a lot of sense, right? To get into the imagination side because the left side is the survival brain, right? So that's where you get into just facts, figures, and you're just like bang, bang, bang. So I really love that. That's amazing.
Yeah, that's interesting. I hadn't thought of it left brain, right brain. And I've read different kind of theories around that now. But it is interesting to be in your creative brain.
Yes.
One of the things about kind of this idea of overall happiness that I think is very true is that people are designed to be creative.
Yes.
So when and it goes back to the same thing where, people might tell you, focus, stop daydreaming, are you making money doing that? Like, you don't need to be painting pictures. You should be, doing something that makes money all the time.
Yes.
But we get a lot of pleasure from, maybe gardening or building or painting or making music or writing poetry. So,
and reading good books.
yes,
Yes.
yeah, exactly. For sure.
So G, get creative. What's E?
Yeah, so the G was gear up your imagination. Now the E is when you start to really get into the work. So that's when you start to take action. And I call it the 3 E's. You can either entertain yourself, educate yourself, or enlighten yourself. So for the traffic situation, you don't have to do anything. You don't have to throw your hand out the window and give anybody the finger, right? You don't have to necessarily blare your horn and scream, in your car. So you can entertain yourself. You could put the music on, listen to a great podcast, right? Or you can call a friend. I like to listen to audiobooks. You can just do something else. You really don't have to attend to that particular situation.
Yes.
Now, sometimes you're going to have situations that you need to attend to. So, say it is, I mentioned like different political opinions or something like that. Maybe there's a lawn sign and you see it every day and it's driving you crazy. So, you might say, okay, do I need to get educated on this topic? Um, does it make sense for me to take action or, talk to my neighbor or do anything or join a group that's, promoting something positive, like what action should I take? I don't know if that's the best example. I'm just thinking in this environment now,
Yeah, very relevant. Yeah.
it's so current. Yeah. Um, but what do I need to do when I'm in my right mind that can address the issue that I'm having? Now, the third E is enlightenment because some problems you are not going to be able to solve and they might make you crazy, right? So if you are really bothered by um, my first thought was homelessness, but homelessness, you may be able to work with a charity or do something that makes you feel like you can solve that. But suppose it's something like an overseas war, right? We have those going on too. So if it's something that's a war or global poverty or, global child abuse, these issues that it's too much for you to resolve it. And you could, social justice issues, you could be angry all the time.
Yes.
So that's when you need to have some sort of, and when I went through the mind blowing happiness, the 12 steps, the second one was spirituality, because you have to have some spiritual grounding that's
Mm-hmm.
going to help you make sense of things that you don't understand or help you process things that you don't understand. Um, so that's the big one. And then the last one, the R, is to recognize your success. So, to close out the habit loop, anytime we're trying to do something new, you want to give yourself a little nod, even if it's internal, even if it's just a smile. Maybe you're driving, the person cuts you off. Usually you would have screamed out the window and given them the finger, but instead, you listen to a podcast.
Bless you, sir. Bless you. Yes. Yeah.
Then you could just say at the end, you know what? Look at me go. Look at me go. And that's it. Just recognize that you did a thing. And you might have saved yourself a little high blood pressure, you saved yourself a little bit of time fussing, and you were able to maintain your pleasant personality.
Yes. I love that. Those are all practical and easy. And I like that you mentioned like it's okay to make steps and make progress. Like we're dealing with emotions which can be complex and hard, right? And sometimes we're angry, even at road rage, there's a compound effect, right, too. So if you're already going through something, you got some bad news, and then you get on the road, like just give yourself a break, relax, breathe. Be kind to yourself.
Be
Absolutely.
kind to yourself.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Self-talk is another big conversation that I have with clients
Yes.
because you're right. We're angry with other people, but we're also yelling at ourselves internally.
It doesn't feel good to stay angry and stay in a place of where you need to get vindicated. It's just not a healthy place to be. But if we can control what we can control, and if we can find some joy, and I love the playfulness that you talked about with the creativity again, because it really is, as adults, we're told that play is not a great way to learn, but it really, really still
Oh
is
gosh, yes,
as
it is.
adults. The people I
Yeah.
know that have lived long, my grandma's 99, she still plays. Like
Oh, yes.
it's that playfulness, it's that childlike, right? Like that curiosity, that wonder, that like, oh, let's dig into this a little bit. That's what keeps us flexible and it helps calm, right? That
If
anger.
you're not playing, what are you doing?
I
I mean, to
know.
me, that's where joy is, to do things
Yes.
that you realize that you like.
Yes.
Whether they're games or like gardening or whatever it is that you're into, play
Hmm.
is where the good stuff is. Hmm.
So, what has it been like working with clients through anger? Like, are people now coming to you obviously for happiness, but are you seeing some really interesting results with the work around the anger?
I have, and I want to give a little tip before I talk about
Yeah.
clients. Because you guys can take this away. It's really easy. When you talk to yourself, your words should be one, kind, and two, encouraging. And if it's
Oh.
hard, imagine you're talking to someone that you love. Because sometimes
Mm.
we forget that we're supposed to be someone that we love. So if you think of a child or a loved one or a pet, it makes it sometimes easier to learn how to talk to yourself
Yeah.
well.
One kind,
Mhm.
two encouragement.
Kind and encouraging. Yeah. But so with the clients that I've worked with, and I wouldn't say, my clients don't typically come to me with like clinical rage. I'm serious. I'm not like a
I don't know if they'd be
psychologist.
quite ready if they were raging. They're probably not. They're probably thinking they still enjoy their anger a little bit.
Well, a lot of people, they do because it makes them feel empowered. So typically clients are coming to me because they're feeling overwhelmed.
Yes.
They feel like maybe things are not going the way that they want them to go, either in their life or in their career. And then when we start to unpack things, then they realize that they have those cranky cousins very busy all the time.
Mhm.
And the self-talk is also, you know, creating this kind of constant discontent.
Mhm.
Um, and I think, honestly, I think it happens to most of us. It happened to me before I understood that I can actually change those things. We think that emotions are just, we feel what we feel and we can feel whatever we feel, like if we have no control over our emotions. But we do. We actually do. We can control. I mean, that's part of what meditation is. It's
Mhm.
learning to control your thoughts and learning to control your feelings. So you don't have to feel bad all the time. And you don't have to think about things that make you unhappy all the time. If you pause, it all goes back to that same acknowledge and pause, kind of in the beginning. If you pause and recognize, okay, I'm feeling this thing, but I don't have to follow it,
Yeah.
you know? So yeah, but I've seen just, amazing transformations with my clients in their personal lives and how they feel about themselves, and also in their ability to perform in their careers. So yeah.
Yeah, it's not just a bubble. When we get happier, our community, everything around us expands too, right? I
And
was,
also,
oh,
like
sorry, go on.
I'm sorry.
No,
Also, I'm on a roll now. So
yeah, no, keep going.
because
Keep
I'm
going.
also thinking,
Good
we
stuff.
talk about self-love, but it's really also confidence, right? So that confidence has a big impact on the way that you engage with the world, particularly like in a work environment, but even in personal environment as well.
Yes. It's funny, one of my biggest lessons, if I can share a moment, one of my biggest lessons about my own anger was about a year ago. So, newly married. So, my children are from my first marriage, and my son, a teenager, and he's very involved in basketball. So, there's lots of practices, lots of games. And my husband is not really a sports person, and he's a great stepdad, very good to my kids, and we're a great family, but he's not a sports guy. And he was coming to a lot of the games. And then one night he's like, I don't want to go tonight. I just don't. And I was like, no, but you have to. You have to. And then I was like, he's like, why are you getting so mad about a basketball game? And I was
Yeah,
like,
Chrissy.
yeah. And then I was like, why am I getting so mad? And I'm like, oh, I'm mad that you get to say no. Now, why don't I get to say
Mhm.
no? And then I was like, buddy, is it a big deal for you if I go tonight or no? He's like, I don't care. Can I just get a ride? I'm like, of course. Like, and then I was like, it wasn't even anger. It was anger at myself for
I
not,
love that.
giving myself permission to have what I wanted, right? Or to do what I wanted to do. Like it was just so interesting the way he's like, why are you so mad? And I was like, oh, there's that curiosity piece. Like it just gave
I
me a
love
second,
that.
like, oh, because it was an expectation. It was an
Yeah.
obligation, but I can choose and we can choose, right? We have choice. So it was really, really
Yeah, I
interesting.
love that you recognize that for yourself because for most people, they probably wouldn't recognize it, you know? Mm-hmm.
Yes. Well, I was lucky to have a
Self-awareness is
smart spouse
huge.
that was like, yeah. We're not getting divorced over this, so figure it out.
Not married. We can.
Yes. Oh, it'll be such an interesting story. So how could people find you and work with you and read your books?
Yeah, so you can visit theangermyth.com. There's a really cool 2-minute quiz on there
Yes.
that will give you your anger quotient, and it'll also put you on my mailing list so you can find out about other fun things. I
Yeah.
host a free
Yes.
monthly workshop. It's the last Thursday of the month at noon Eastern time. It's called the Mind Blowing Happiness Circle, and
Mhm.
I lead you live through meditation, some breath work, and we do some mindset guidance for the month ahead. So that's a lot of fun. And on social media, it's my name, which is Trish Ahjel Roberts. You can Google that and find all kinds of stuff all over the place.
Yes, we'll definitely have it all in the show notes so people know exactly where to go to find you. Are there any last words of wisdom or encouragement or kindness and 2 words of encouragement you would like to leave with our audience?
I think the biggest thing that I would leave with your audience is just to be curious. Be
Mhm.
curious, to question the things that you think that you know, and to be kind with yourself.
I love that. Thank you. Thank you so much for your time, Trish, sharing your heart, sharing your practice, and thank you for letting us see Cooper. He's so adorable. Thank you.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.